Story 1. My mom called me a fat son of a bitch when I was about 10. While typing this, I realized she also called herself a bitch. Story 2. My grandmother told me I was useless and that no one liked me. I was not very upset when she passed away. Story 3. When I was a child, I reached the point where my mom was no longer quick enough to hit me. I was faster, I suppose. She did not believe something I was telling her, but I cannot remember what it was. She called me a liar, spat in my face, and said, "Liars are the scum of the earth." All the previous beatings vanished from my mind. I have never, nor will I ever, forget what she said and did. Story 4. When I was about 14, while having a fight with my father, he told me that they should not have had me. Almost 20 years later, I have forgiven it but never forgot. Story 5. My father told me I am a person who deserves to be miserable in life. It was the final blow in 25 years of terrible things he has said to me. All things he conveniently forgets, rolls his eyes whenever I bring them up, and claims never happened. We barely talk now. He sends memes on Facebook and complains to my mother that I never call. I call my mother weekly, usually when he is at work. Story 6. I was almost 6 feet tall and weighed 140 pounds soaking wet, trying out for the football team. We had been practicing 3 times a week for a couple of months, and naturally I was getting demolished in a lot of the contact drills. The bigger guys made it a sport to hit me as hard as they could. At the end of every practice, there was 20 minutes where we would do a full scrimmage. In the huddle, one of the star running backs looked around and said, "So this is the team, huh boys? Except for you," and pointed to me. Everyone laughed. The huddle broke, and as I was jogging out to the wide receiver spot, someone hit their hand flat over my ear hole, which, if you have ever had it done to you in a football helmet, is quite loud. That comment was the realization that they were all laughing at the skinny guy trying to make the team. It just destroyed my love of football. I didn't even wait to be cut. I biked over to my coach's house, put my gear on his porch, rang the bell, and left. I see that the running back who made that comment isn't doing great in life, and honestly, I'm happy for his struggle. Story 7. I used to get made fun of a lot for my nose as a kid. Pinocchio, bird boy, you name it. I do have a big nose, but it is not a disfigurement or anything. Think Adrian Brody, except maybe a little smaller or with less sharp facial features. I am almost 40 and still very self-conscious about it. My wife loves my nose, but I do not fully believe her when she says it. Also, a girl in junior high once told me I have big pores, and I have never been able to forget that. Story 8. I don't know why it stung so much, but I am a tile contractor working on a job site. A dad was walking his little boy down the street. The boy looked over at me, saw me working with tools, and said something like, "I want to be like him when I grow up." The dad, without missing a beat, said, "Come on, son, you're better than that." I'm very good at my job but don't really like it and have always been a little self-conscious about it. I don't blame the dad because I understand his reaction. I think maybe that's why it hurt. By the way, where's my dog? Edit. Oh God, seriously, thank you everyone for all the love, kind words, and stories. Honestly, it means a lot to me. I was not expecting a response and got hit by a wave of love. Salsa verde tacos are on me, family. Story 9. My brother's girlfriend said to me, "You would look nice if you took care of yourself." I was in the middle of a divorce, working the night shift at Amazon warehouse, and trying to hold it together for my children. Story 10. In 2nd grade, I was told to mouth the words in the choir instead of singing by the music teacher. I still have a complex about singing to this day, 30 years later. Story 11. Had a drama professor harshly criticize my admittedly poor attempt at a one-act play in front of the entire class. Then he wrote a long handwritten letter about how awful the play was and how I should have gotten it out of my system and could now find another major. He ended with some advice. A list of self-published books he produced that I could purchase if I wanted to stay in the class. I still have that letter somewhere 25 years later. Story 12. My sister told me that no one would ever want to marry me. This was over 10 years ago, and it still stings. Story 13. I was born with cerebral palsy and walk with a limp. During kindergarten recess, I was climbing up a jungle gym and sliding down a pole repeatedly when a teacher told me that I should not climb because I was disabled. I told her that I was not disabled and would do whatever I wanted. I went to medical school, practiced medicine full-time, and still do whatever I want most of the time. Story 14. I was talking to my then wife, now ex-wife, about how excited I was about something I bought for one of my hobbies. She interrupted me and said, "You're pretty, but sometimes I wish you would be quiet." Story 15. This was about 20 years ago. Parents, remember, these things stick. I had saved my small amount of money and bought a cute summer dress. I was wearing it to the mall with friends. I thought I looked good, which was rare. I struggled with being bullied a lot in high school, and at that age, my self-confidence was very low. As I was leaving, my mother looked at me and asked, "Where did you get the dress?" I should note that I gave my parents most of what I earned waitressing, so she was asking because she wanted to know if I was keeping money back. I saved up and bought it on clearance. She gave a mean smirk and said, "Yeah, it looks like you got it on clearance," then laughed at me as I left. Story 16. It is less of an insult, but I am constantly accused of being on drugs or assumed to be a dealer. I try not to take it personally, but I have spoken to a doctor about pushing the subject. Story 17. My paternal grandmother told my mother I was immoral because I had people in my dorm room after classes hanging out. Mind you, it was several people, not just men, on a regular basis. I had the best room among us. I never forgot it. Story 18. Crack baby grew up in crack houses, homeless shelters, and foster care. Eventually, they were adopted at age 14. My wife knew these things when she said it. Story 19. A couple of memories come to mind. When I was pregnant, at my baby shower, my sister said, "Wow, you got fat." I only gained 25 pounds throughout my whole pregnancy. I was already depressed and was doing what I could to manage the weight gain. At about 17 years old, I told my mom and stepdad that I wanted to go to university to study science. My stepdad said I would waste my time because anything logical is not meant for girls. My mom agreed, saying I would amount to nothing and should just go work at the bar with her. They then charged me for living there until I decided to live on my own. I finished my studies and now have my dream job. No thanks to them. Story 20. I mentioned that if I ever got the chance to perform stand-up again, I had some new bits I wanted to try out. My wife said, "You are never going to be on stage again." Story 21. I was attacked while walking home from the library. When I came home, I was yelled at, called a whore, and told I was just making it up because I was obviously screwing around and got pregnant. I was covered in dirt and blood, including blood running down my legs. Ever since then, I have been afraid to report anything. Story 22. My parents were going through a divorce. I was 14 years old and living with my mother. My father moved out. I do not recall what I was doing wrong, but I remember my mother angrily yelling at me, "You are just like your father." I knew it was the worst possible thing she could think to say to me. She never treated my younger brother badly, but I always received the brunt of things, being the oldest child and apparently most like my father. Story 23. I don't know if it was an insult, but it was something close to it, and it remains a core memory. My dad told me he would never support my education, laughed, and said I could never be a veterinarian, which is what I wanted to be as a child. My mom, who is a textbook narcissist, told me I had never done anything for her, even though I had to care for her frequently as a child and well into adulthood because she was an alcoholic. Story 24. In high school, my dad sat me down and told me that I was a useless person, had no discernible skills, and would not make it anywhere in life unless I got a college degree. He said my mother completely agreed. I looked at her, who was usually my advocate because he was then an undiagnosed bipolar and prone to random outbursts, and she began crying. Then he proceeded to tell me he loves me because I am his son but hates the person I am. For reference, I was an A-B student, had a job since the day after my 16th birthday, was never in trouble with the law, never went to parties or caused trouble, and never destroyed anything. I had just mentioned I wasn't sure if I wanted to go directly to college or take a year off to work and figure out what I actually want to do with my life. Story 25. My first long-term relationship told a mutual friend, and it got back to me, that he is not that attractive but his personality makes up for it. I do not know why I let that hurt so much, but it did. Story 26. My now ex, obviously now, said to me, "Your father would never have been proud of you. My dad passed away when I was a teenager. I was 34 when she said that to me. She knew how to hurt me and she used that knowledge deeply. I walked out of the house and never saw her again. We were together for 3 years. She called to apologize, but I never saw her again. We spoke on the phone but never met in person again." Story 27. It's not my fault your partner is broken. I caught my ex cheating on me while I was going through chemotherapy for cervical cancer, and this is what he told me. Story 28. My mother, who years ago expressed that she would have rather had a third cat than me, reminded me of this just this past Mother's Day. I invited her over, made her filet mignon and lobster tails, and as dinner finished with my wife and 2 kids present, she announced that even though dinner was lovely, she still would have rather had a third cat. I don't think I'm going to talk to her for a while. Story 29. My science teacher told me he cannot wait to order McDonald's from me when I am the cashier, and my guidance counselor said I should write him a check for $50 instead of paying for the Scholastic assessment test because it is a waste of time. Today, I am at my final interview to be manager at one of the biggest hospitals in the United States, and both of them are dead. Story 30. I was going out with this girl for a couple of months. Nothing serious. I could feel it wrapping up, and we weren't on the same page anymore, but I still wanted to hang out. One week she completely ignored me, and then finally messaged me after 6 or 7 days. When I asked where she had been, she said, "It's not my job to entertain you." For a guy whose biggest insecurity is that I am a burden to my friends, that really hurt. Story 31. I'm a man in my 40s, and I have a lump in my throat from all the difficult things your parents did to you. I will hug you anytime. I need to go hug my children as well now. Jesus. All love, Dad. Story 32. I told a friend that I had feelings for her. I wanted to express it and move on. However, I was not prepared for this. There are 1,000 reasons why not, and every single one would hurt you. It still stings a decade later. Story 33. We were at church camp asking girls if they would like to be our date for the end of camp dance, the slow dancing kind. When I got rejected, one of the other boys told me it was probably because my chest was bigger than hers. I was an overweight kid and have since lost a considerable amount of weight, but I still think about it often. It was probably about 15 to 17 years ago. Story 34. Mother called me a taker. All you do is take. You barely ever held me or hugged me. You mocked me when I cried and held your hands under my chin to catch the river of tears. You almost never consoled me. I feel like an empty shell of a person most days. I didn't want any of that material stuff. It's just the least you could do after giving me the childhood I had because you didn't lay to rest your own mother's demons. Story 35. Not an insult toward me, but as a teenager, I was chatting with my then 8-year-old autistic stepbrother. I am autistic as well. He liked drawing houses, so I told him he should be an architect and explained what that meant. Our stepmother interrupted our conversation to tell us that college was not for him and that he would be better off as a Walmart greeter. That was the moment I realized her occasional cruelty toward him was not an oversight. The best thing I could do for him was to counter every negative thing she said. He is older now and has made a lot of progress in the academic skills he used to struggle with. He is fully college-bound if that is what he chooses to do. Story 36. I went to a community pool with a friend when I was in my early to mid-teens, before I got my driver's license. The pool was crowded but not overly crowded, with enough swimming room for everyone. A rude kid suddenly came up and shoved me, nearly knocking me over, yelling, "Move it, fat lady!" I never went back. I never went swimming again. That was 20 years ago. Story 37. A friend's sister once said, "I don't understand how my friend gets so many girls." My friend replied, "Charisma goes a long way." It was the first time I realized I was not very attractive. This thought stayed with me for years. Story 38. I have a rather large nose, and in high school I wore black safety prescription glasses when playing sports. In the middle of a volleyball game, I was about to serve and I heard someone in the stands say, "He looks like if he took those glasses off, his nose would come with it." I admit it was very funny. I couldn't even get mad, but it really shook my confidence. Story 39. Two occasions come to mind, both with quite a different effect. 1. During a break at school, I was hanging out with a friend when suddenly one of our classmates approached us. Out of the blue, he said, "The thought that any of you will someday have sex is the most disgusting thing that has ever come to my mind," and then walked away. At the moment, I was just weirded out by it, but for some reason, it had a long-lasting effect on how I perceived myself. 2. School again. At some point in class, someone mentioned that I laugh like a monkey. It took me several weeks to laugh freely again, but luckily, it passed. Story 40. When I was in the 7th grade, a boy in my class found out that I liked his friend. He started laughing hysterically and shouting it loudly to everyone around. I'm not defending this behavior because it was cruel, but I panicked and threw a bunch of small candies at him, which he dodged. This made him angry, so he told me that I was so ugly that not only his friend but no other boy would ever want me, and that I should just kill myself. He was extremely serious about it. The fact that others around agreed and laughed along with him only made him seem more right. It wasn't until I met my husband that I was able to confidently tell a man I had feelings for him. Story 41. Someone I respected, I asked why some people had become cold toward me. His answer was, "Because I am different. I am different, but so is he and the former friends who had stopped talking to me. We are all adults." Story 42. My ex told me, when I was 21 years old, that my genital area smelled unpleasant. I know he was lying and insulted women when he was angry with them. He once told his ex-girlfriend, who had lost a lot of weight, that her genital area would always be fat. He was full of deeply hurtful insults that attacked women where it hurt most. I did break up with him after this comment. I am 35 this year and recently allowed my husband of 11 years to be intimate with me orally. His comment basically undermined my sexual confidence for almost 15 years. Story 43. Is it wrong that I do not remember what they said, but rather the emotional damage and the fact that I stayed sad all day and did not talk to anyone? Story 44. The summer after my sophomore year of college, I was working an internship with 3 or 4 other students in my program, including a senior boy who was not very mature but really good looking. I definitely had a big crush, but I thought I was playing it cool. One day in the break room, I walked into a conversation everyone was having about the viral Hot Crazy Matrix. As I was walking in, this guy smiled brightly and exclaimed, "And over here you have girls like Percocizing who are in the no-go zone because they are ugly and crazy." I laughed it off because I did not want anyone to think I was too sensitive, but 10 years later, that still hurts a little. I was struggling with weight gain, an eating disorder and cystic acne, so I was already acutely aware that no one was eager to make me their girlfriend. It just kind of sucked to hear it confirmed out loud. Story 45. I had a difficult friend breakup recently. In his last message to me, he called me annoying for bothering him with my problems. I have deeply rooted anxiety that I am annoying and venting too much because I was an autistic and ADHD child, so I was constantly told that I was annoying. It cut deep and really made me regress in how much I am willing to open up to others. The worst part is he knew all of that and said it anyway. Story 46. When I was 3, I still had trouble making sure my butt was completely clean after going to the bathroom and would get stains in my underwear. When my stepdad was mad at me, he would call me shitty, as in get in the car shitty. I can still hear his voice and the tone in my head. I have never forgotten and never forgiven him. I was a child and barely out of diapers. He was an adult and should have known better. My revenge is being a better father to my children than he ever was to me. Story 47. My husband called my vagina a dead end and told me I was a barren wasteland after I had to have an emergency hysterectomy due to a car accident that also caused the loss of my 7-month pregnancy. Story 48. You just don't get it. People don't actually like you. They're just being nice to you. My long-term partner said this to me after several of his friends had invited me to a party that did not have a set date and was a couple of months away. He said he could share the date with me when they set it, and they'd love to have me there. One night, he was randomly getting ready to leave, and I asked what was up. He told me he was going to a party, so I said, "Oh, remember I was invited. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll be ready." He looked upset, and when I asked if he was okay, he said that. He said several other awful things through the years, but that one stung the hardest and made me question my self-worth and doubt so much, which was stupid of me. I'm ashamed it took me a year to leave after that, and it got so much worse. All the lies, gaslighting, cheating, and the horrible things he was doing behind my back made me feel sick for a long time. It turns out a lot of people care about me the way I care about them, and he is a trash excuse of a human being who uses people. I learned his history and noticed the patterns. He would always say he hated himself but never got help, kept repeating the same disgusting behaviors as always, and continued to hurt people who were not like him. There is so much I could say about the things he said to me over the years to break me, but this one sentence still makes me cry, even if it is not true. Story 49. When I was in high school, I asked a girl out and she said sorry. I was a great guy, funny, and even had an amazing body, but she said I had a really ugly face. Over half my life later, after having multiple partners and now a wife who all insisted that I have a cute face and had no idea what that girl was talking about, I still can hardly look at my face in the mirror sometimes. That was when I learned that the worst she can say is no is not true. Story 50. My voice is really deep, and I usually get great compliments, like people saying I sound like Keith David or Christopher Judge and that I should do voice acting. I have never shied away from talking to people, knowing they enjoy it. One day I was at the bank, I think depositing a check, and the woman behind the desk told me I have the voice of a kidnapper. She then deepened her voice and said, "I got your kids." I'm sure it was meant as a compliment, but it really hurt and made me self-conscious for a while. Story 51. When I was in 7th grade, I was washing my hands in a public bathroom, and someone said I looked like Andy Dick. Unfortunately, he was right at the time. My face has changed enough, and I can grow facial hair now, so the comparison does not hold the same. But at the time, it was like 1-to-1. Story 52. I bought my Subaru car and was learning how to change the oil. My father tried to help but was complaining the whole time, so I told him to go to bed because I could tell he was tired from working in construction. I successfully changed the oil and was cleaning up the mess around the garage. My father came down, saw that I had left the old oil filter on the table covered with towels, and noticed the oil stain on the table. He yelled at me, then said, "What is this? You're not smart. I won't help you anymore." That upset me, considering all the things I have to learn about cars on my own. I was very intimidated by cars, and after accomplishing the oil change, I thought he would have been proud. I learned who not to become that day. Story 53. My stepmom said, "You have had 3 mothers and not a single one wants you around. You know why? Because you are an ugly, insufferable kid who whines about being in pain. Your first mother killed herself because she knew what you would become. I was in a wheelchair because my adopted mother got drunk and decided to use me to stop a big rig. The head-on collision nearly killed me. I still refuse to admit when I am hurt because of that. I broke my knee at work with a piece of rebar going through it. I still managed to drive to the emergency room and refused to admit it hurt until the doctor came out to the parking lot. It is very dumb to hide that pain. Why do I do it? Because of this angry quote from her. It screams in my head daily. Story 54. I can't be spontaneously funny, but I like jokes. I enjoy making people laugh. All my humor is pre-prepared. You can ask me to tell a joke, and I have a few ready. One day at work, I told a joke I had read earlier. The person I told said, "Dude, you're a walking repost." Story 55. Most things my dad said to me when I was a kid. The beatings I received were often terrible. He would be in jail if that happened today, but this was the late 1980s and early 1990s. Story 56. Standing in line in elementary school, my parents never bought me Nike shoes, so I wore my brand new BK shoes. A kid behind me, William T., told me my shoes looked like bubblegum. To this day, I don't know what that really means, but I didn't wear those shoes to school again. I still remember it like it just happened. That was in the 1980s. Story 57. I had a guy in high school who I thought really liked me. I was squeamish about boys, and the first time I got enough courage to say something about him liking me, he said, "You thought I liked you? I was just trying to boost your confidence." The guy liked me, but from then on, anytime a boy showed me attention, I thought it was just nonsense and they were playing games with me. Fast forward 25 years. My teenage boy said something so foolish to me, and I thought to myself, wow, I've been dwelling on something an idiot teenage boy said to me in high school. Story 58. A rude person at a Coldplay concert told me I had a double chin. I do. And that I show too much gum when I smile. I also do. Even though I see it too, I didn't need you to remind me of it. At least I am not ugly on the inside like you. Story 59. I was always criticized for my mouth breathing. I remember one time in junior high, I attempted to breathe through my nose. A kid who would periodically pick on me made fun of me for my closed mouth, asking if I was sick because of how I looked. I still remember this to this day and am somewhat conscious of how I look when breathing correctly. Story 61. My dad, in the heat of an argument, told me that being sexually assaulted was my fault. 2. My ex told me that I looked like a piece of cardboard without makeup on. Those two things gutted me and haunt me to this day. Story 61. When I was a teenager, I was withdrawn from school due to severe chronic pain. I was in and out of hospitals and had an abusive alcoholic mother. Years later, I had surgery that cured my pain and went off to college. When I came back to visit, my mother was drunk one evening and trying to start a fight. She said, "Your brother didn't get a childhood because of you." I love my brother with all my heart, and that hurt me deeply for a long time. He told me that, if anything, me being the focus saved his childhood rather than stopped it. I don't think I will ever forgive her for saying that. Story 62. I had a friend, well, more of an unpleasant person that I happened to live with. We were chatting online with some other friends, and he was boasting about how tough he was. We all engaged in some good-natured teasing. In response to something I said, he told me that he could come into my room and assault me anytime he wanted, and that neither I nor my dog would be able to stop him. Story 63. Years ago, I was having a serious discussion with my younger brother, and he said that he does not see me as an older brother. Considering I always have doubts about being infantilized, that dug deep and I have never forgotten it. I have not tried to give him a piece of advice since. Story 64. My professor in advertising school said, "You are not that good, you know?" I was the top designer in the class of 1980, with multiple design awards. I had national work experience before and during my program. This feedback stuck with me. Story 65. My grandma called me ghetto and said I was a burnout who would not go anywhere. It did not exactly hurt, but it made me very determined to show her how wrong she was. It has been years. I have a career, I make good money, I own a house, and I have a social life with a lot going on. I still remind her, when the conversation comes up, that she told me I was going to be a nobody. Story 66. This is a weird one that I never thought I would write a story about. I have always thought you can tell a lot about people from their eyes and gaze. I do not think this was a conscious observation until much later, but it might explain why the memory stayed with me so strongly. When I was in 8th grade, I was outside playing at lunch when I walked past a girl I did not like very much and said something kind of mean to her for no reason. I do not remember what it was. She looked at me coldly and, with malice, said, "You have the eyes of a snake." She was Asian and had moved here recently. She spoke English well enough, but I doubt she had developed many insults in English yet. Maybe she thought this one would cut deeper. For some reason, it stopped me dead in my tracks. I had never been insulted like that before. I remember stopping to pay attention to my eyes and realizing that I actually did have the eyes of a snake at that moment. About 10 years later, I took magic mushrooms, and while I was tripping, I remembered this and panicked about it. Thinking about it now, aside from my eye situation, my parents are Arab and devoutly Christian. Both the culture and religion I was raised in view snakes as the representation of ultimate evil. So even though I had never been insulted like that before, the weight of the insult landed deeply. Story 67. I once received negative paperwork while in the military and was forced to read aloud in front of my leaders and several junior Marines. Lance Corporal Slightly has been given multiple leadership positions and opportunities to lead and mentor her junior Marines. She has failed all of them. Her incompetence makes her unreliable, unfit for promotion, and unable to lead any Marine left under her charge, including herself. They forced me to sign and then immediately left the shop for the day, saying, "Slightly, you've got it. Shut it down by 3:30 p.m. and last body out by 4 p.m. The non-commissioned officer who wrote the scathing paperwork against me smirked and laughed in my face when I looked defeated because he knew his statement was entirely false and specifically phrased for maximum damage. He knew I could do nothing about it since he was a staff sergeant select and I was a lance corporal who had been non-recommended for promotion twice. This was the third. He was punishing me for not engaging in quid pro quo, where I refused his demand to sleep with him as a condition for a promotion I deserved. Story 68. You, look at that overweight boy. I was 14, and a group of 9-year-old girls said this to me while I was walking home. I took it personally, and now I go to the gym 4 times a week. Story 69. I was in a special class for kids who were failing mathematics. One day we were working on a project, but I cannot remember what it was. My group was trying to find the answer to a problem but could not figure it out. I kept suggesting that we try a different approach. That is when the teacher came up and said, "Do not be such a control freak." It hurt me deeply. In every situation I am in, I now hyperanalyze things to make sure I am not being controlling. Story 70. 1 year into my marriage, I was taking a birth control pill that made me really mean, but I didn't realize it. One day, my husband looked me dead in the eye with tears and said, "You're emotionally abusive." I felt cut to the heart. I will never forget that moment and that comment. I stopped taking that pill immediately and worked hard to regain his trust. I am happy to say that we are best friends again. Story 71. 2 things. First, I was 8 months pregnant and working in the office for my father's company. My mother had a meeting to attend and wanted me to help her curl the back of her hair. She is very vain, and I somehow didn't do it right. So she said, "Have you ever done anything right in your life?" The second was from my abusive ex. I cooked him his favorite dinner while he was in the bedroom on his phone watching pornography. I brought him his plate, and he looked at it and said, "You're so simple." That hurt. Story 72. My childhood best friend called me a disfigured mutant because I was born without one eye. It's been more than 20 years. And I can still remember and feel the sting of pain I felt hearing that. Strangers insulted me frequently from toddlerhood to adulthood, but a friend's insult was always more painful. Story 73. I was genuinely upset about something and crying when a friend told me to stop with the fake tears. Story 74. My mom, a few weeks before I graduated university, said that I was her biggest mistake and that she regretted ever having me. This was a little less than a year ago. When I brought it up to her, she said that she would never have said that. It has haunted me every single day since. She has said countless other horrible things to me, but none of them hurt even a fraction as much as that did. Story 75. My mom, when I was in late elementary or early middle school responding presumably to me being bullied, was advising me on my appearance and said, "Some women are naturally beautiful and for the rest of us there's makeup." She doesn't remember, but it's classic her. It's a shame she has internalized so much awful about herself too. Story 76. Not me, but once in 8th grade, a heavyset girl told a quiet boy that she had more friends than him. He replied, "Yeah, if you count chicken wings." Brutal. Story 77. My dad used to tell me, "Clean the wax out of your ears and tell your boyfriend to stop bothering you there." If I didn't hear something he said, I had deep-seated homophobia because of this that took me a long time to overcome. Story 78. I'm not entirely sure this counts as an insult, but anytime someone has told me, "It's always something with you," it is said out of anger and frustration. My mother said it all the time growing up when I wasn't feeling well or needed help with something. My manager even said it a few days ago after I had to call out due to being in the emergency room the night before and had been given strong painkillers because they had to perform surgery. I never asked to have chronic illnesses. Story 79. I am adopted. I was removed from my biological mother's care because of serious neglect. My biological mother was a prostitute. One day, when I was between 14 and 15 years old, my adoptive mother and I were arguing, and she told me that I would end up on my back like my biological mother. My adoptive mother died when I was 17. I have never forgiven her for that. Story 80. I can't remember. Remember the compliments you receive. Forget the insults. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. Baz Luhrmann. And I don't know what I did to forget it. Story 81. I was in an extremely abusive marriage that came with enough insults to last me a lifetime, to the point that I cannot look at myself in the mirror without hearing them. But the insult that sticks with me most came from the man I dated after him. It was my first relationship after my divorce and abuse, and he knew very intimate details about what I had gone through. He knew about all the rape, all the bruises, all the insults. One day he broke up with me, saying I deserved all of it. He said other things I do not really want to share, threw a bunch of my abuse back in my face, and said that my ex-husband was right about me. That honestly hurt me more than the things my ex-husband said. It hurts enough to hear you are ex, but it hurts so much more to not only have that agreed with, but to hear that I deserve being called or treated like ex. Story 82. My girlfriend angrily called me a mama's baby boy in front of her daughter because I wanted to see my family for my sister's 21st birthday. Compared to other things in this thread, it is not that bad, but hearing that from someone I love, trust, and want to marry really stung. Sometimes I think I should have left right then. Story 83. In school, when I was about 13, the cool girls were talking about cellulite and said, yes, like I have. I was borderline anorexic at the time, and that sent me into a huge spiral. I crossed paths with one of them later in life when I took a door-to-door sales job because I didn't research the job properly and needed to raise funds for university. She was a supervisor, so she must have been there a while. I hope Georgina and Pauline have resolved their issues and are leading better lives. Story 84. I used to live in an abundant and vibrant co-living community. We shared meals and had parties. It was a thriving community of up-and-coming technology professionals, social activists, and artists in Oakland. I came to the house after a difficult separation. I had become a single father and was looking for a home and a sense of community after several very hard years as a new parent. After I moved out, I later discovered that one of my housemates harbored deep resentment towards me and thought I was hitting on his wife while she was pregnant. Mind you, we never did anything outside the house together or participated in any activities together. I would just offer advice about planning for children and have general conversations about my own parenting journey. In a fit of rage during a house meeting, it came out that he never wanted me in the house again. I was banned from coming to the house because of this accusation. Many people who I thought were friends did not stand up for me or protest the so-called vote. I was the only person of color in the house among mostly white Christian, atheist, and Jewish group. It is etched in my memory how you genuinely cannot trust most people if there is nothing at stake for them. Story 85. A few days ago, one of my friends called me a fat, lazy loser. We were arguing about basketball opinions, and he became personal. I have been unemployed for a few months without success and have gained weight. I am done talking to him now. Story 86. My takeaway from this thread is that adults, especially parents and teachers, should be very careful about what they say to children. There are some incredibly sad stories here. Story 87. It's not usually what they say, but the tone used that makes me feel bad. My boyfriend is the only person I know who does not use a negative tone with me and is very easy to talk to. Story 88. I tried growing a beard at 18, but my brother said it looked like pubic hair. A few years later, after some development, I tried again and was compared to Fidel Castro by a coworker. Story 89. An overweight, unattractive girl in my brother's 8th grade class told me, "I can't believe your brother is so attractive, and you are not. The joke is on her." I ended up being better looking than my brother, and she is still overweight and unpleasant. Story 90. I was arguing with my girlfriend at the time when I was 19. We had a horrible, toxic relationship where we both constantly cheated. She said, "You are absolutely pathetic. You will never love anyone. Nobody will ever love you. You will never even love yourself. It has been about 10 years. I am a completely different person now, but I can still hear her saying that. Story 91. A decade ago, in my early 20s, a childhood friend told me that I come across as pseudo-intellectual. It still hurts me a lot. He must have forgotten it, but I cannot let it go somehow. Story 92. This one is a little funny. I contacted this guy on Grindr many years ago, and he said something like, "You have huge nostrils, and it is the first thing people notice about you. People will never be able to see beyond that." And I was like, God damn, all I did was say hello. Story 93. You're a miserable, negative person. This was said to me by a coworker with whom I was trying to be amicable. Ironically, this coworker was always mean to people and a very unpleasant person inside. I regret going out of my way to be nice to them. Some days I feel down and it shows, but not all the time. Most of the time, I'm friendly to people despite being an introvert, or I keep to myself, not looking to engage with others. I suffer from depression due to many factors, including the death of my father when I was young and the murder of my younger brother in my late teens. Hearing this person say this about me, despite knowing nothing about me, hurt me deeply. It was true in some ways, but also made me angry because they were a terrible person themselves. Story 94. In 2013, while I was in college, an app called YIK was released. It was basically an anonymous forum for colleges where people would post about various topics, such as relationships, party locations, general rumors, and random information. Someone posted, "That I is a dog guy has the worst pizza face I've ever seen. I struggled with acne and was seeing the dermatologist frequently, but that comment really hurt. I ended up starting Accutane shortly after reading that, and my acne cleared up quickly." Story 95. A man in his mid-40s, 5 feet 9 inches tall, sporting a midlife crisis blonde woman with breast implants as arm candy, was sneering at his ex-wife who was having lunch with me. He said, "How does that worn-out person feel, boy?" I replied, "Virgin after the first 2 inches." He punched me but did not get the chance to repeat himself. Story 96. You work like a slave, my dad said to me repeatedly, once or twice a week from when I was around 11 or 12 until I went no contact at 19. I am a pale white redhead. What he meant was, you're working harder than you need to. But he was too old and old-fashioned to say things politely. It has been almost 4 years since no contact with him, and I still notice traces of the trauma caused by internalizing that repeated comment, alongside his other abuses. I will never forget his ability to be racist, even when race had nothing to do with the situation, and how he used race to try to demean me, his child, when I was doing my best and working hard. There truly was never a moment he couldn't find a way to be racist, and that will never leave me. Story 97. I am 23 years old, pregnant with my first child only 3 months after getting married, and I realized I had made a mistake with this marriage. I told my husband I was really scared to be pregnant so soon after marriage and asked him if he was afraid of anything about this pregnancy. His answer has always stuck with me, even though we have been divorced for 35 years and he passed away unexpectedly at 64 last October. He said, "Yes, I'm afraid that you are going to stay fat after your pregnancy." That crushed me. Story 98. When I needed emotional support growing up due to abuse and bullying, I was told to suck it up, do not be a baby, for years. I now have severe trust issues and extreme problems in opening up. Thank you, teachers and parents. Story 99. About 2.5 weeks after getting married, my husband told me I was a mistake. When I asked for clarification, he said the marriage and I as a person were a mistake. The same man told me he was glad our baby was dead because I was miscarrying. Anger can get the better of people, but words have consequences. Story 100. The girl I lost my virginity to, who I also had a huge crush on at the time, ended up telling some of our mutual friends how terrible I was compared to them and how small I was, which she drastically exaggerated. The same friends told me this the very next day. I did not know then that she had been with any of them. My friends were very kind and reassured me they did not believe her, but it left me with a chronic fear of intimacy and severe insecurities to this day. I lost my virginity at 16, and I turned 29 this year. I have never been in a relationship, and the few sexual experiences I have had since were drunken hookups that I was too insecure to enjoy and immediately regretted afterward. I know we were both just naive kids who knew nothing at the time, but that one cut really deep. Story 101. A lady around 55 years old grabbed me and called me a monkey when I was 12 years old. It was spoken with enormous hatred. I was with a couple of classmates, girls and boys, and I didn't really do anything. I felt completely humiliated in front of the girl I liked back. Then, especially because I decided to run, it made me feel like a coward, and it played in my head constantly what I should have done if I could do it again. She became my nemesis for many years, a decade even. I would antagonize her. She is dead now, but she never knew what I did. Story 102. A parent said I was useless and that I would never amount to anything. I might as well give up on life. They said that right before I went to college. Now I earn more than they ever have in their careers. Story 103. I remember I was pretty young, maybe around 8, and my father was upset about something I did and called me stupid as a mule. I cried to my mother about it, and she showed compassion and promised to never call me that or anything like it, only to call me a stupid mule about a week later. In retrospect, it definitely was not that bad, but I remember feeling deeply betrayed about it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.